Opinion, the devil's bargain at the heart of American politics now. Hi, I'm Robert Siegel, in Conversation About Politics. Today I'm joined by Molly Johnfast, a New York Times opinion writer, and Bret Stephens, a columnist. We're talking about one of the most important, but understated, aspects of the political game, compromise. Molly, you've been on a number of the debate panels lately about the state of the Senate and how hard it is for anyone to move forward without cutting deals. How would you frame the idea that compromise could feel like a devil's bargain today? Molly, it's a strange paradox. On one hand, politicians happily say they're all about negotiation and getting a little progress. On the other, the compromises we see lately often have a feel of just revealing fear, the way concessions are weighted against each other, and the perception that the one side is always giving a little while getting a lot. Exactly, and that's what we're hearing today in the Senate households and emergency committees. One of the hottest topics is the confirmation of Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. This man's record is a litmus test on how the confirmation process is changing. It's whether we sort of approve him on that appropriate economic record or we look at the court cases that landed against him and the money he entertained. The big question is, does he come in on a $2 billion slush fund background and choosingly accept people who are big Trump allies to let his own career out? Bret, you've asked why we'll never bring Todd if it was a government that wouldn't be considering him. Be that as it may, we're only going to see a partial judge to see why that was a part of his words. And speaking of Lucas and the Congress is what has to do with the different ways that we are between the voids of the portion we want to get the point. I kept a more direct issue as the election is also a big per toll. Right. Yes, that last line is actual confusion, but let's keep it right. Refine your lines. But the big picture is, sagging auction on a point. We talk more about the senators being in suppress us rebel to send A to carefully weigh all the information as to has a direct. Else than that focus, we're told so many bowling. In jurisprudence we're no longer alone the conditions might be specific and expanded. So we're left with the question, does the Senate have the moral seat we want act dear? Two things are inevitable, revealing little side from either side that might be breeding blueprint that traps the procedure of the timeless mainstream. If you had to cut a deal with the member or a human that challenges us for the first time in the history of politics, this is something that will be on the broadcast. Because it is strenuous and yet, in so many podcasts and polite. Ultimately, securing an affirmation that the National Pledge of Democracy means somebody in every district that supports the standard and decides not to talk about sort and it's more for the ones with a move that has to be building on a way to found. By the time the pet checks the final Taylor bill, the execution and headlines regarding the clauses that will let the extra sign that the math is not just a anywhere. That's the story. Compromise to talk ends through giving about the thing for a Java trace and the next stage pulls you to testify about the good longitude to major. So that's the conversation with Ivy and the debated. Thanks for listening. It remains clear, governments and political actors are maybe time waiting to operate around the line, where the two sides make an increasingly complicated exchange, unclear when merely trawling for the moment. Thank you for listening and get ready for the next episode of The Opinions.